right. Well, welcome back to another edition of the ADAS Empowered Podcast. I am your host, Joel Adcock. I am Director of Strategic Partnerships at Rev. I am joined by a good friend and colleague of mine, Jay Goninen, who is co-founder and president of Wrenchway. Truth be told, I was able to be on Jay's podcast back, I guess, mid last year, and always enjoy my conversation with Jay. Really looking forward to hearing more about fundamentally what Wrenchway's working on, what they've been working on, and really kind of diving into some opportunities for folks that are getting into the repair space and different paths for technicians and what other topics that we kind of get ourselves into today as well. So, Jay, thanks for being a part of this. Good to see you. Hope you had a great holidays. And if you could, just take a minute to go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, first and foremost, good to see you as always.
Yeah, thank you.
Have to give you and the whole Rev team a bunch of credit for the waves you've been able to make really, really quickly. And it seems quick from the outside. I'm sure internally, maybe not as much, but it's been so fun to see your growth and the company's growth and all the great things you're doing at Rev. So I had to start with that because it's been a pretty cool thing to follow along and always fun to see that.
If we can figure out how to slow time down a little bit, that'd be great. It's no rest for the weary, but it's a great spot to be and appreciate the kind words, obviously. So.
Yeah, and as far as Wrenchway goes, for those of you that don't know me, as Joel mentioned, co-founder of a company called Wrenchway. Wrenchway, it's kind of gone through this evolution where we started off kind of in the recruiting game, really focused on technicians, shifted to more of a job board and kind of a job board on steroids, if you will. And that's really kind of what's led us to where we're at today. We've actually gotten completely rid of recruiting, so we don't do anything that we got started with, and are in the process of phasing out what was our job board. We'll still have our top shops pages just because our clients, a lot of them were upset when we were like, well, maybe we're considering taking this away. They didn't want that. So we allowed them to keep the top shops pages, and we'll continue to grow that side. But that's more of career pages for their own websites to be able to really kind of show that technician that's out there what opportunities they have, and then really kind of give them some detail around what the job is. Really cool career pages as a whole. So they're still there. This latest shift for us has been a pretty big one. About a year and a half ago, we partnered with ASE on some bigger initiatives around our Voice of Technician survey, and then our technician pay tool, which has been really well received. Both have been really well received, but ASE support has been hugely helpful.
Yeah.
And as we kind of continued to work with ASE, we started to see more and more that we were very aligned in what we were doing. And we were able to bring technology that maybe ASE wasn't able to provide as it relates to the school side. And I'll touch on the school side a little bit more so people understand what we're doing there. But it was really kind of being able to team up with ASE in a way that we could really impact the industry as a whole and do it in a healthy way that maybe we weren't in past years with doing some of the recruiting stuff, because you're ultimately not helping fix the industry if you're just taking one tech from one shop and moving them to another and then kind of continuing that cycle. So in 2021, right around there, we launched something called School Assist. And really what we were trying to do with School Assist is to foundationally help fix the industry. And one of the areas that we saw a huge opportunity was that we had a lot of schools, both high school and post-secondary schools, that were struggling with resources. They were struggling with relationships with industry. And ultimately it led to a lot of these programs closing down. We actually just had one in our backyard. It's really stinks. It's a school that I went through an apprenticeship program in when I was in high school, but they just shut down their tech school collision program. And it was because they just didn't have the industry support. And in a lot of ways, I didn't feel like they were overly accepting of industry support, and it put them in a bad spot to where now the program no longer exists. So we already had this hole that we're trying to fill in trying to get more technicians in the industry. And here's a school that is a primary driver for a lot of these technicians that now is shut down. And that really puts us in a hole to where I don't think you're ever going to get a collision program back there again, because to get one back up, an up-to-date collision program at a tech school level, how expensive that is, it'd be really, really hard to get that back off the ground. So a lot of what we do now is centered around that. And so we teamed up even more formally with ASE, and we are in the process currently of launching a program called ASE Connects. And ASE Connects is a shop membership driven platform where we are working on some of the broader goals of the industry to try and put us in a healthier spot. So when I say that, we're trying to identify that Southwest tech that's out there and say, okay, what issues are you having and how can we help? And so we feel like bringing all of industry together to attack these. So it's not just dealers in one bucket, independents in another bucket, fleets in a different bucket, like all of these people that are trying to help with the problem, but almost end up fighting against each other because they're all trying to bring help, and it overwhelms that instructor, it overwhelms that dean, it overwhelms that career counselor in a high school. There's so many people that are now trying to help that at times it becomes overwhelming. And so we wanted to provide one central platform to get everybody involved. And we're working with associations. We're working with the shops themselves. We're working with some partner companies that have gotten involved and really have that desire to see the industry get to a healthier place. In really, that's where the Connects piece of ASE Connects comes into play, because we are trying to bring everybody together. And from our standpoint at Wrenchway, it's an ASE driven program. It's ASE's program. We're running it for them. We're bringing the school elements of what we had with School Assist into this program in a way to drive a lot of visibility to industry with what's going on with these schools. The other piece to that, and this is something that came up pretty consistently in a number of different ASE board meetings that we were at, was that we really didn't have any good data behind the amount of programs that are out there. So if it's a collision program or an automotive repair program, nobody really has good data, even at the state level. It's shocking and alarming as to how little data is out there and how little our government knows about what's out there. So we're working on kind of a big goal. It sounds simple. It's not simple. I can guarantee you, if I told you it was simple, I think our Wrenchway team would kill me, because they're working really, really hard at it. And so our first ambitious goal is to just document every school that's in the United States. So we're doing this on a state by state level and really trying to figure out, how many schools are actually out there? How many have programs? How many don't have programs? How many programs are ASE accredited, but maybe don't have the funding or don't have the support? Or how many programs would like to be ASE accredited, but really don't have the resources to even go through that accreditation process? So we're trying to identify those. And even I grew up in a really small town, and I moved back to my really small town about 3 years ago. We had 50 people per class, like a total, if you freshman through senior, you've got 200 to 250 people at any given time in the entire school. So the chances that you're going to have an actual automotive program of any type is very rare. A lot of times it's just a basic tech ed woodshop type program. Yet there's a lot of kids in these programs, in these schools, that have a desire to get involved with what we're doing. So we're trying to shine a light there. How can we get them into work experiences? How can we get them to job shadow or apprentice or do whatever it is that we can do to get them exposure to our industry at an early age? So really, I know that's a lot from everything, but ASE Connects, we're really, really excited about it. It wouldn't happen without our full trust in ASE and how they're moving as an organization. They've been very open to partnering with everybody, right? They really, really have this desire to do that. That's where it made a lot of sense for us to maybe even partner at a deeper level than we were before. And just really excited about this launch.
That's amazing. I think that's, fundamentally what we look at and what I think about is how do you connect with groups or associations or collaboration where people win, opportunity wins. You think about any and every way of uh, whatever that method is of what you're trying to accomplish, and understanding that there's a gap, and then you find the right folks that you want to partner with. Um, that's how I think this industry continues to kind of get itself back in the right spot, so to speak. I don't want to say continue to shine because I think it's lost a little bit of luster, right? I mean, there was a massive push for a long, long time. You got to go to college, you got to do 4 years, you got to get there's been a pretty sizable push, at least from what I've seen, and you probably have seen it too. And I know you guys have been kind of behind this, but it's okay to go to a trade school. It's okay to follow your passion for things that are not necessarily associated with a 4 year college degree, because there's plenty of people out there with 4 year degrees that look, they're still kind of floundering in life. They don't necessarily know exactly what they need or what they're looking for yet. For the folks that want to follow their ambition to whether it's automotive repair or any number of different trades that are out there. I mean, I went to Skills USA last year. I was blown away by what's out there as far as talent. I mean,
Oh,
these are high school kids, going into maybe their first or second year, potentially even on the trade side, and they're it's phenomenal to see, and it's really inspiring if for nothing else. Um, I guess two questions come to mind. How did the relationship with ASE come together? I'd love to hear more about that because I think it's a good thing to think about in terms of like for people that are out there listening, like they want to partner, they want to collaborate, but they're a little bit maybe timid or scared or not exactly sure where to start. I think sometimes you just got to take that leap of faith, right? And then secondly is, have you guys seen a difference, or has there been a noticeable push uh, for again, kind of talk about like that? You don't have to necessarily go to a 4 year school nowadays. You can follow your ambition, and it's sad to hear about like I'm assuming you're talking about Southwest and Fenimore, or maybe something
yeah,
different.
yeah.
That's it's really it's not good to hear that they've kind of like closed up shop, so to speak, and pardon the pun, but um, because I think there's a lot of opportunities out there, and I'm starting to see it more and more where kids are like actually now thinking about like, hey, I love cars, or hey, I love doing this, or hey, I love doing that. I want to follow my passion, and I guess number three to this, if you will, is there opportunities for like I know you're from a small town, I'm from a small town. If the numbers aren't there necessarily for that school to support it, is there opportunities for schools to co-op together?
A,
So I'd
a
love to
lot
hear
of
your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I'll start with the relationship with ASE because it is a really important one to us. It I think really started. It'll be what, 2 or 3 years ago at the NADA show. I think that year it was in Las Vegas, and Dave Johnson, who's the current CEO of ASE, I was able to meet him. I was always really close with George Aarons through ASE, and George said, "Hey, I want to introduce you to Dave." So I go and I meet Dave at the NADA show. For those of you not familiar, it's for the New Car Dealer Association, and we. The very first thing Dave said to me was, "Oh, you're Jay from Wrenchway. I have a love-hate relationship with Wrenchway." And I said, "Oh boy, what'd we do? What'd we screw up?" And he goes, "No, I love what you guys are doing, but I hate that ASE wasn't the one to do a lot of this." And so from there, it was just kind of this mutual respect. And we had this desire to work together and partner to maybe fix the greater good of what was going on out there. And so those conversations just kept going. We kept having great conversations. We had similar interests in terms of wanting to see the industry get to a better place, and so those conversations just kind of kept that momentum snowball going, right? Like we just kind of kept like going through and showing them what we were doing and being very transparent about everything that we were doing, and they were doing the same with us. Like they had Dave Dave's classic line with ASE is that he wanted to blow the dust off the brand, and I think there's some level of where that was needed. And so there have been so many cool things that have come out of that and out of Dave's leadership, one being a much better relationship between ASE and iCar, right? Like there's been some really, really cool things where we had, I guess it was a year ago, not this past SEMA, the SEMA before, but had a great meeting between iCar and ASE and really just trying to get them on the same playing field and making sure that they're understanding and not only understanding each other, but supporting one another. And I think we've really taken the steps needed there. Give Kyle at iCar a lot of credit as well, along with some others. Dare Goroff has been phenomenal in that relationship. Adriana, like just all the entire iCar team has been phenomenal to work with as well. So again, it's you see a theme here in that you're trying to bring all of these people together who are all really good people trying to fight the good fight in a way that puts our industry in a healthier position. Because I do think you're absolutely right that the talent level of young people right now is through the roof, and there is a different emphasis on the skilled trades. In front of me here, I know you can't see it, but I've got the America's Talent Strategy that the Trump administration had put out, and reading through it, there is some level of, I think they're scared of what AI is going to do to a lot of white collar jobs. And so they're trying to, from a governmental level, shift the focus, reskill people, get people in positions where it's not going to be something that's going to be taken by AI. That's where we're in a really good spot, right? Because it's going to be a minute before that, obviously it's having a positive impact on our industry right now, but there is danger with a lot of jobs maybe going away. You see it with some of the mass layoffs going on right now. And I've had a number of different friends that work for tech companies, for example, where their job has really been eliminated, and they're really high salary jobs that were eliminated. So I think there's concern from a governmental level there, and maybe that's where the shift in thinking for the skilled trades is coming in. But then you have all of maybe this fandom or this different perception of the skilled trades that's really starting to go up, and then Southwest Tech and Fenimore you see go away, and you're like, okay, so now we're getting all these kids fired up to be in our industry, and now the people that are training them are going away, and so it's this weird thing that we're fighting right now. And I do think we still fight the stigma from a lot of administrators at schools in that we're not cheap programs to run. We're, if it's hard to find teachers, it's really hard to find teachers. That's something we've got to fix. That's more of an overarching goal and something that I think we've got to pay some more attention to internally at Wrenchway and the ASE Connects side, is just being able to shine a light on that a little bit more. But then getting, to me, is such an important piece of this is getting the right kids into our industry, right? Like, not just because somebody has an interest in our industry, but really looking at it from the standpoint of, does this student have a future in our industry? And I think in a lot of cases, shops treated this very similar to how they treat when they need a technician, right? A lot of times, if I'll make a joke when I'm speaking at a conference, how many of you would hire somebody that could fog a mirror? And everybody's laughing and raising their hand. I said, that's part of the problem. We're willing to hire anybody that wants to come in our doors because we're so desperate for help. Systematically, we need to work at this so that we have a little bit more selection. And I think the earlier you can get to these students and these young people, the more you're able to kind of help them self-select who is going to be in this industry. And we're not sending somebody to a trade school where they're spending tens of thousands of dollars on education and starting off with 10 grand in tools and all this stuff, all this debt for a kid that's not going to be a fit within our industry. I think it does a disservice and maybe leaves a bad taste in people's mouths when they do that. But then truly identify young people that want to be in this and have that desire to learn. I think the ADAS side of things opens up a whole different opportunity for us to stand out to young people, because now, hey, not only do I love cars, now there's some technology on this and there's some cool stuff. And even that part, I think, is a concern to me, because again, if you're stoking these students up and you've got a high school program or a tech school program that doesn't have updated technology, and they don't know how to calibrate, a system, right? We need to be able to be there to at least help them get resources, or if they can't get the equipment, let's get them into a shop to show them in a shop setting how to do this. Like, let's really kind of get our hands around these programs and help them. And you had mentioned the part about co-oping schools. I do think there's maybe opportunities there as well, in that if these programs are hard to fund and we can't find teachers for them, then maybe we go with fewer locations with just better programs as a whole. Then you have to figure out how to commute students to those programs.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I was down, um, shout out to Randy Golding at Westmec in Phoenix, was able to visit his program a few years ago. And they have that kind of co-op type program where they're pulling from other high schools that are offering them their, the core credits. They're then busing in these kids to this high school that is I mean, the facilities are phenomenal. It is a really, really nicely run school. The shop, it looks beautiful. They have resources, they have the tools to be able to do a lot of this stuff. But the funny part is, every time I talk to Randy, he's like, I can't find anybody to come into our school. It's the same three people every single time, or the same three manufacturers. And we hear this from schools over and over and over again, that they're begging people to come and actually be active participants in their program, but struggle when they need somebody to come be a judge for Skills USA, or they just need somebody to come speak to their class or offer a job shadow. So my opinion is, the more we provide visibility to these schools, to what our industry has to offer, and the more willing participants we have from the industry side, the healthier we're going to be in the long term. And I think one of the major barriers that we fight with this is that in shops, we all kind of live in our month to month P&L, and it's hard to see that we need to approach long-term development a little differently, because it's not going to have a positive impact on our bottom line the first month we bring in an apprentice or a job shadow or whatever it is. But I think for most of us that have been around the industry for a long time, if you look at this and are truthful with yourself, nothing's going to change until we change. Nothing's going to improve our luck. I mean, it truly is just a math problem. We don't have enough people to fill all the open roles. It's debatable how short we are. I know Ford CEO Jim Farley came out and was talking about this, and that sparked a whole lot of conversation. But regardless of what the number is, if you're at a shop, you're a local shop, you feel that pain, and maybe you don't care about the whole nation's numbers, but you probably should, because the more, we get back to how it was when I was growing up, which was, I don't steal a tech from a neighboring shop. Like, that was a cardinal sin back when I was growing up. And those rules just went out the window when everybody got desperate. So I think a lot of it, I think there's opportunity for consolidation. I don't know, like consolidation of schools and making really, really good programs. I don't know if that's the answer for every school, right? I think that's the importance of identifying every school and really trying to understand their needs, and understanding that not every school is the same. Not every school's tax base is the same. There's so many different variables. And for us, the overarching thing is, how do we attack this thing and truly get an understanding of the scope of schools, and really, how are we helping those schools to make sure that they don't have to close the doors, like they feel supported by industry, and that we're able to really kind of help bring that. And I could go on and on about that for days. But then the other side of that happens to be, how do we keep them once we get them, right? Like, I think that's the part where our data side is really coming into play with ASE Connects. I'm really excited about what we're building out there. The salary tool was a start, and we're just going to continue to bring more and more data to the table. We just got done with our Voice of Technician survey for this year. That's been very well received. That'll go out in early February. The report will, with all the data. We give that out to industry. We're trying to help educate shops so they understand what they need to be doing in order to be able to keep these people in their shops and keep them happy. I think that the shops need to make sure that they're focused on keeping their staffs happy. So the data side of what we're growing with ASE Connects is really, really exciting as well.
Have you had a chance to review any data points within that survey that really stood out to you?
Not this year's. We just are fresh off
Okay.
of kind of closing it up. Yeah. Oh yeah. In years past, I have. I know last year I talked a lot about my frustration in that we do a net promoter score each year, right? And the net promoter score had actually gone down year over year last year.
Mm.
So like we had all of these efforts to try and help improve the industry. We were working our tails off to to make sure that we're helping shops understand what they need to be doing and changing, and not just shops, like industry as a whole, manufacturers, um, both from the aftermarket and OE side, like just everybody. We need to get everybody on the same page in a lot of this stuff. And to see that that net promoter score went down was really concerning and alarming, right? I feel like there's a lot of opportunities for shops to just step up and be better. And it's easy for me to say because I'm not living in each and every shop every single day, but it comes from hiring proactively, getting the right people in your doors, and then having, that solves the short term. Your long term needs to come from development and developing your own. And the more you can do that, and the more you can find quality young people to come in your doors, the more likely you are to have good culture in the long term and have a sustainable pipeline of people. But then you look at the programs. If you don't have a strong program, how many good students are going to be coming out of that program? I think that's where it comes back to having good programs that are kind of that resource for all of us to keep all of our shops full of people, and that's where that collective effort really comes.
Are you seeing a decent amount of shop ownership invest back into some of these schools? I think of like the line is, what if we invest in somebody and they leave? What if we don't invest and they stay? Like,
They
it's cliche, but as shop owners, I see the same things you probably see from a social feed, and like we're short on help, we're looking for help. Where do you guys go to hire people? Like, if you're investing back down through the rank and file of like the schools and the educational pieces as a shop owner, are you seeing a decent amount of shop owners that are doing that, or are they kind of waiting for things to come to them as far as the help goes?
This is where I see kind of a clear line between the good shops and maybe the shops that could use some improvement, right? Like you look at like a Gustafson Brothers down in California that is just knocking it out of the park with their development system. They don't have a lot of the employee needs that a lot of others do because they are so proactive with their local schools. I give John and Trish there so much credit because they take it seriously. They take their development serious. They take the awareness of students serious. They are very, very serious about it. And they're amongst the best shops in the nation, right? Like they just are really, really good at what they do. Dwayne Myers, this is on the repair side, but up in, I believe he's in Maryland, same thing, like just incredible work with an apprenticeship program. There's no excuse not to do an apprenticeship program now, right? Like whether it's a Napa or iCar or, there are apprenticeship programs available to you where they're giving you the resources to do this program. It's a matter of execution. And are you able to actually take it seriously? And so to me, I think the ones that really focus on the schools are in a different tier. I do think more shops are being pulled up to that tier right now, right? Where I think there are a lot of, if it's an independent shop that's out there, a lot of shop owners that are probably just sick of chasing their tail because they've been doing the same thing for the last 10 or 20 years where they're just always looking for help. And it's never like, there's never an automatic there. It's always a challenge. That's why when you go into those conversations, when we were in the recruiting business, the easiest thing to sell in the world, right? Because you're going out and saying, we can help you find technicians. One of the hardest things to actually execute on, because you could do everything in your power to find a technician and still come up short. And going back to the numbers game, that's what really kind of, I think, helped us understand that piece was that if there aren't enough people to fill all the open holes, like, yes, it's easy to sell, but it's not easy to execute on. And we need to fix this foundationally. So I think to answer your question, there are I think a large growing number of shops that want to get involved. They know they have to get involved. There are still some that resist and kind of say, well, either I'm 5 years away from retirement and I don't even want to worry about that. Well, guess what? If I'm coming to buy your shop, if you have a sustainable pipeline of talent coming in, your shop becomes immediately more attractive to me to buy, because then what I'm selling, which is time, we're able to actually sustainably produce that versus always desperately looking for people.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. And I'm always curious about that because I think that's inevitably the easiest path to fulfilling prophecy of work, culture, boosting your NPS scores. Sort of, I like to think of it as like you send that elevator back down, right? You want to like you get to a certain spot, you know that reinvestment is critical and key, and partnering with the right groups and associations makes all the difference as far as helping put in defensible techniques so that you're constantly at staff at full capacity, and it results in a much better product, I think, in a customer experience because everybody's kind of bought into it at that particular point. You're not just answering the phone, going back to the shop, trying to do all the different things you're trying to do because you're trying to manage things because of the fact that you just haven't reinvested in what's really critically important as far as your team and your staff and your culture and your infrastructure. Because you're exactly right. If you're at a spot where you want to walk away from this and you want to do that through acquisition, and you're going to look much more attractive to somebody to say, hey, look, I've got a great team, I've got a great staff, I've got a great culture, I've got a great brand, I've got all these great tangible things. Makes it much easier for somebody to come in and say, look, this is pretty turnkey for us at that particular point. So it's interesting too, you mentioned the relationship between ASE and iCar, and I think that has to be, from my assumption, that repair is, or the collision side is starting to see more of where the repair has been, with the diagnostic pieces and some of the troubleshooting and understanding trouble codes, and it makes sense for these groups to join. It sounds like you guys were sort of the conduit between ASE and iCar, so it's really encouraging to hear because look, the diagnostic side is continuing to grow and evolve. The ADAS side, the technology is just, it's outpacing, I think, even what really, really good groups can keep their arms around. And, truth be told, that in a couple of years, maybe even shorter than that, if you're not fully invested on the diagnostic side, the technology side maybe is the better way to put it, things are going to get way out of your reach really, really fast if they haven't already. What are you guys seeing as far as appetite for folks that are moving away from some of that traditional repair training investment into the ADAS side? Because you bring up a really good point. It's sort of a brand new thing. Kids are growing up with technology in their hands at a young age. My 10-year-old can navigate the iPad as well as anybody. And my stepson, he's 18. He built his own built his own tower computer and understands like the basics of the technology. So they've got a definite curve ahead against like people myself. We're not old, but we're kind of
we're getting up there, Joel. We're getting up there, right? Now. So yeah.
the way cars were fixed 15, 20, 30 years ago they're substantially different. So as that ADAS component becomes more pronounced, is there, are you seeing more of an appetite for that? Is that really where the kids are gravitating to, or what does that look like now, Jay?
Well, I think I've shared this with you in the past that's been a concern of mine as well. Just that we own an independent automotive repair shop up here in Wisconsin, and understanding the landscape of who's responsible for ADAS and kind of this next generation of technology has been even confusing to me at times, right? Because we almost at times put that onus on the collision shops and say, okay, you're taking care of this. And then at the same time, I was down at the shop 2 weeks ago and we had a bumper off the front of a car, and that you need to be doing, everything that you're supposed to be doing then. And so I think, you are seeing more of an appetite from the collision shops to have more of that repair capability to move forward, because it is going to take more diagnostically. I know John Melendez at JDM Collision outside of Chicago there, he's very outspoken on the need to kind of start to see the merging of maybe collision and repair a little bit, in that you're going to need elements of both on the collision side, right? So as you're looking at, that collision shop manager that's out there right now, that's something to take into serious consideration as you're moving forward, right? Like you need to, if that's something that's going to be core to your business moving forward, it might not be that panel pounder that's been in the shop for 30 years, right? It might be somebody that you need to invest in training in, that you need to maybe look at a different skill set for. It might not be the same type of person that we've traditionally been aiming for. So I think that part is, I don't know if I've got all the answers to it, right? Like I think there's some element to where there is still some gray area with both the repair side and the collision side. And really for me, that's the importance of having iCar and ASE working together to kind of organize some of this stuff out, right? And getting them aligned has been really huge. I know I mentioned this earlier, but our relationship with iCar has taught me so much about the collision side, and really, Jesus, if Jesus is listening, shout out to you, because you've been extremely helpful to us in understanding that side a little bit more. But from if you were to take a step back and you look at this whole system, iCar and ASE are big players in both, right? Like that iCar on the collision side, ASE on the repair side, and some collision side. And the more they're aligned, I think the more we start to kind of figure it out as an industry, and really kind of get our footing and feel confident in our footing. I know I've shared with you in the past that as a repair shop, to go spend $100,000 on ADAS equipment is a little concerning, because you don't want to spend $100,000 on equipment and have it sit in the corner of the shop for years on end, right? Like, so and even with that, the advancements in ADAS, like, static versus dynamic calibrations, you don't know at times where that's going. And so I think that's the big concern, in that I think there are times where maybe industry doesn't have those answers yet either. And so the more, again, going back to the ASE Connects piece, the connecting, it's getting everybody aligned and trying to figure some of this stuff out, because there are things that I don't have answers to, or wouldn't claim to have answers to yet. But I do see collision shops having more of an appetite to bring in some of that diagnostic capability.
Yeah. Do you see any challenges, I guess, from a generational side? You think of the shop owner that's been around for a little while, and they're trying to connect with the younger generation. Like, what is the younger generation typically like? What are they looking for an employer? Because I'm sure it's changed, right? There's certainly a different, I don't want to call it a demographic, but that's the only thing I can think of as far as like the term or the word. Because I work with a lot of younger folks as well, and it's not that they don't have the same work ethic. It's just it's a little bit different. Like, how does a 25, 30-year shop operator connect with that younger generation? Do you have any insight on that?
So one of the best speakers I've ever seen at a conference, and I wish I knew her name because she was phenomenal. I don't even remember what conference it was at. I just remember her presentation, and it was very impactful to me, because she got up on stage and she had a large photo on her slide deck of a Time magazine, and it was talking about the next generation. And it was, this young generation is sloppy. They're lazy. It's going through all of this list of things on the cover. So it's like listing out all of this. But the funny part was it had the date covered. And so as she's talking, this little black piece over the date goes off, and it was from like the 70s. and it was talking about the baby boomers, right? And so it's this funny thing where I think the older you get, the more those generational gaps exist. And this is not a new thing, right? This has been something that's happened generation over generation. And so it's easy to get stuck in how I was raised in an industry, right? And I speak to even my upbringing in a shop where
Yeah.
there was a lot of yelling and there was a lot of throwing wrenches and swearing and a lot of this other stuff that happened that we grew up with and frankly became pretty numb to over the years. And so,
Right.
I think as you're looking at it, we as we get older need to be, and I know there's going to be shops out there that roll their eyes when I say this, and I totally empathize with you. I understand this, but we have to adapt our style a little bit, right? And I think our expectation a lot of times is that we're business leaders. They're coming to work here. They should fit what we do and who we are. But if you're that shop leader that's constantly struggling with communication, you're constantly struggling with, kind of just thinking they're in their phone all the time. Get out of your phone and work. Well, a lot of cases they might be using ChatGPT to help them with something, or they might be, even a lot of this,
Being
the
resourceful.
business systems are run through a computer. So it might be easier for them to use their cell phone than it would be to use a tablet or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think the more you can ask questions and understand their mindset and do it in a way where you're probably, as much as you're going to try like get frustrated with them and get irritated with some of the ways they do things, like you also have to be somewhat accepting. And are there times where maybe they need the stick rather than the carrot? Absolutely. Like you still have to run a disciplined operation, but I would encourage you to get to know the people a little bit, and young people especially, sit down, take them out to lunch, take them out to dinner sometime, like just get to know them at a little greater level, have some fun with them. And I think some things will come out of that are really, really good. But if you just constantly beat your head against the wall and say, they're in their damn phone again, like, what are they doing? Well,
Yeah.
they might actually be using it for a resource to find something. And granted, are there people that will take advantage of that? 100%. Every industry has it. You're going to get taken advantage of. But the more you take the time to get to know the people, and then remember that you were new once too. And similar to that Time magazine, there were probably people that thought that same thing about you at one point.
Yeah. That's the part about this industry that's always really interesting. No matter what part of it you come into, whether it's being a technician, service writer, anywhere in between, everybody starts at level zero, no matter where you're at. Whether that's at a trade school or at your high school, or you just happen to stumble into an opportunity. I think that's the thing that we always have to be cognizant of as leaders within the industry, that we all started at zero and we had to get to a certain point, whether that was at 16 or 17 or 35 or 36 or whatever that is. I think you bring up a really good point. It's connect with these folks. It's talk to them, learn what their behaviors are, ask questions like, "Hey, I see you're on your phone. Are you what?" Not
What are
to
you
be
working on? Yeah.
not to be like micromanaging them, but like you're exactly right. I mean, they're really resourceful. So if like the laptop's not working, it's not working the way they want it to, they're going to go to the next thing that they know they can use to help serve up an answer, because everything's on the internet. Everything's really readily available, and if they've got access to Wi-Fi, yeah, you're right. You're more than likely they're just trying to be resourceful, using Chat GPT, or they're looking up service information, or they're connecting with AllData, or whatever they're doing. So I think you bring up a really good point. We've got to be a bit open-minded to. It's not that it's improper. It's just maybe it's a little bit different than what we're used to, and being open to that and understanding that generation certainly can be all the difference. So, what are you guys working on this next year? What is Wrenchway going to look like? We forward the clock to 12 months from now. Like, what do you guys? What's your goals, and what are you guys hoping to accomplish this next 12 months?
As odd as this sounds, I think we're going to be in the background a little bit more. Wrenchway as a brand is taking a backseat to ASE Connects, and the reason for that is because we think we can have more of an impact with ASE and with this ASE Connects program. Same thing with iCar. We worked with them with their collision careers website and building out some of the backside of that, and student profiles out there. If you get a chance to go check them out, I'm such a huge fan. I give our dev team and the iCar team so much credit for the build out of those, but easily being able to pull their credentials into a profile so that they're not having to search them up and hunt them down. I think for us, it truly is the partnership side, and there's a chance that you might see less of Wrenchway out there in terms of our brand, but we're kind of putting our power behind some of these iconic brands that I think need to be leading the forefront on a lot of this stuff. And so
Yeah.
going back to what Dave at ASE had told me, they had a love-hate relationship with us. We love what ASE is doing. We love what iCar is doing. We love what so many others throughout the industry are doing. We just want to be a conduit to pull everybody together in a community to where people that are fighting for the right things are brought together in a collective effort to really attack this at its core. And I got asked I was on somebody else's podcast about some legacy type things, and I think for me that is like the goal is if we can leave the industry better than we found it and healthier than we found it, that'll be a success to me regardless of company success. Like I think it truly is the betterment of the industry as a whole. I think great companies like Rev are doing so many good things for our industry, and it's really trying to gather all these people that are doing such important work together so that we have a huge impact on our industry as a whole.
Completely agree with that. It's great to hear that there's, like I said, I love the fact that there's people that are thinking about actively working together, collaborating, maybe putting their brand to the side a little bit to say, hey, look, for the betterment of the industry, to be good stewards. There's opportunity here from a legacy standpoint to leave a tremendous impact, whether that's through a specific brand or looking at something from an ASE level. So if you had 5 minutes to spend with every shop owner, Jay, what would be your advice to them?
No, I don't know if I'd ever just be able to spend 5 minutes with the shop. I love talking shop. So like, me, like that the conversation would go an hour and a half, but for 5 minutes, what I would really focus on is the need to look through a long-term lens, regardless if you are going to be exiting the industry in 2 years, or if you're just getting started in your career. I think being able to look at this in a way that's not reflective of your monthly P&L. Of course, a monthly P&L and profitability are very important. But when you look at this through a 3-year window, a 5-year window, a 10-year window, what's going to change your luck with things as it relates to staffing? And I think the more intentional you are, the more luck you're going to have, the happier you're going to be, because it's not just acting out of desperation, but really being proactive with the actions that you're taking. And it might suck at first, right? To go to that advisory committee meeting and to go, have a job shadow student in your shop and worrying about them being safe and all of that fun stuff. But I can guarantee you, the more effort you put into it, the easier your business will run in that 3 to 5 to 10-year window, right? Like the more sustainable you make it, the more attractive it is to somebody that might want to come by your shop someday. Or if you're passing it down to another family member, you've then put systems in place that make it easier on them. Like it is, taking a step back from your day-to-day life, which can be really challenging because you're putting out fires each and every day.
Yeah.
But the more you can kind of think of that through the long view, I think the more happy you're going to be.
If I'll play devil's advocate here for just a second, if nothing changes, let's just say the status quo is where we're at today, 2, 4, 5 years from now, like what does the industry look like, do you think?
If we just keep doing what we've been doing for several decades now, which is kind of ignoring it until you absolutely need it, right? I think you're going to even have bigger struggles. I think it's funny. I had a technician once tell me, like, why would I want this shortage to get any better? And I said, well, that's a good question. Why do you ask? And he goes, well, I'm being paid better now than I ever have been because people are desperate for my services. And, they know they have leverage on a shop, and in a lot of cases will use it. And so I thought that was such a valid point. And for somebody to be that candid with me was great because we had a really, really good conversation around that. And so what was funny was that same tech that asked that also finished with like, I do want to see the industry in a better place. And I do want to see a young person that comes in be able to create a great career for themselves. So they were almost being contradictory on purpose. But I think that would continue to like if we just continue to ignore it, like it gets so much more frustrating for a shop, right? Because it's going to be harder to find people. And I don't say that as a way to like, oh, scare everybody, but like it's already hard to find people. It would be substantially tougher. And even if you look 5 years back to now, it's substantially harder to find a tech right now than it was 5 years ago. And so I think that just continues to happen the more we punt on this, right? The more that we say that's tomorrow's problem, the more issues we're going to have. And I know the older I get, the faster time goes. 5 years seems to go like that. So, it's easy to put off, but and this goes back to something we used to say when we were in recruiting is, how much time are you spending on this, on staffing as a whole, on understanding the happiness of your own staff? And in most cases, it's only as needed. We're only spending time on this when we're desperate for help. And we need to change that and really kind of go on the offensive attack rather than just always being defensive.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. Obviously there's opportunity, I think, for folks that are truly invested, which it sounds like there is. You've got, some examples that you pointed out of shops that are really, they see the path, they understand the need to continue to invest. I think it's interesting when you talk to certain technicians, they understand they've got a little bit of leverage, and yet they're humble enough to say, hey, look, I'm really hoping for the best, because ultimately I think there's always been a little bit of that stereotype as consumers of like, I really don't want to take my car to the shop because I don't know what I don't know. They're gonna pull the curtain behind, and they're gonna tell me everything we just don't know as consumers, right? Does that stereotype get even broader because of the fact that there's been such a lack of investment by appropriate parties within the industry, to the point where what's the actual fallout at that point where it's a viable revenue driving resource within a community, it's adding livelihood to families, and all of a sudden now, because of the fact that consumers have a lack of trust even more than they already do in these shops, like that's the understanding I think you've got to look at from that long-term fallout of like what you're not doing today to invest can really be affecting things down the road from a and again, I don't want to like to play a devil's advocate on this stuff, but
No, I think it's fair. You and I have had conversations about this in the past. I think you've done such a nice job at educating shops on something as simple as selling ADAS, right? Because this is a new technology to a lot of people.
yep.
And I always talk about how challenging it is to say, okay, your vehicle's in for an alignment, okay, or we're doing some suspension work or something like that. Hey, we need to do this calibration. And like, what? Like this is a made up thing. And you're like, no, it's actually like it could harm your family if you don't do this correctly. And
pixie dust, right? That's exactly the point. Is there's now even a wider gap. You've got unbelievably sophisticated vehicle technology with consumer lack of trust. They took their car and to get 4 new tires and an alignment, and all of a sudden now the phone rings and says, "Oh, by the way."
That part, and that's where I'm such a fan of what you guys are doing, because it is sorely needed. We need to continue to help educate customers. I think we need to really focus on professionalism from the shop side as well. I think the more we can get, you talk about that 5 minutes with a shop owner, the more you can act like a CEO, like a true CEO, and your job is, processes, people, getting the right people in the doors, and the more you can proactively do that, like it just a better run shop. And that includes customer education. It's a lot easier to educate a customer when you look polished and everything's nice and clean, and than it is if, it's the grungy old gas station. Like that's not, a lot of times that's a perception a lot of people have in their head still, and we need to get around that. And that customer education is a huge component of that. That's something I've talked with David ASE a lot on, is general consumer awareness of where to take their vehicle, how to make sure that they are going to a trustworthy shop. I know ASE is putting a lot of effort behind that right now. iCar has done a phenomenal job as well.
Yep.
It just there's a lot needed there. Like, I think the emphasis on that is going to be huge in the next 5 years.
I agree. I completely agree. Jay, this has been amazing. Man, I know you and I could chat probably all day long.
We always do.
Well, yeah, it's always
Yeah.
fun to get caught up, and as fellow Wisconsinites, which I don't think we mentioned at the top of the show, and we're actually probably not too far from each other this morning as we have this conversation. But
No.
truly appreciate your time. Would love to have you back on at another point, and continue to hear about the evolution of the partnership between you guys and ASE, and anything else that comes along of benefit. I mean, I think it's tremendous. And for anybody out there listening, again, I think you just have to really look in the mirror and say, if we're constantly faced with the same challenges, the same issues, day in, week out, month over month, year over year, it's like you're really going to have to think about, like, what do we need to do that's going to be a little bit different and maybe out of our comfort zone, and look at the folks that are really truly flourishing because they're making that investment. They're really invested, not from just a financial standpoint, but emotionally and physically, and they're doing all of those things that ensure the livelihood of not only their business but as the industry as a whole. So, again, appreciate your time. Looking forward to our paths crossing at some point. I don't know if you're going to be out at NADA again this year, but I'll be out this way, or out that way, I guess, in Vegas later, early next month. And we look forward to seeing you out there at some point. So
I'm going to miss it this year. My co-founder Mark is going in my spot because we have a family trip to Disney World that same week that I was trying to coordinate schedules and how do I get to Vegas to Orlando, and it was causing all kinds of chaos. So luckily I've got a great business partner that is going in my place for a lot of the meetings. And so we'll for sure have a presence out there. There will be, for anybody going to NADA, we'll have some literature and some other things at the ASE booth as well. So if you want to learn more about ASE Connects, we're teamed up with them there as well.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Enjoy your trip to Disney. And again, we will, I'm sure we'll chat soon.
Thank you, Joel.
Thanks, Jay.